Hey guys, welcome to the stream, and I hope you're all having a lovely Sunday afternoon. We're about to get started. Last night we were talking about procedurally generated stuff and how I basically done that, and what that has led on to is simply the fact that we have a bookcase which I imported from another project and it isn't quite working. So I decided to let's get stuck in there and find out why it isn't working. And with that in mind, we can have a look at how I actually did this, and from there we can actually fix it. But the first thing we need to do, to be quite honest, is to tidy this up a bit, because it is a bit of a mess. So let's start by doing that, shall we? We're going to tidy this up a bit, and I am hopefully going to explain as we go how this bookshelf was put together in the first place. Okay, and by doing that we should be able to then fix it, or at least that's the plan. Okay, so we have our bookcase. Okay, and if we do a simulation, you'll notice our bookshelf gets filled. That's all nice and lovely. But our problem is that it isn't working when we bring it into the game. It is only filling the bookcase. It is not giving us the random possibilities that were built into this procedurally generated books. So let me explain for a moment, shall we? We basically have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, and these are the starting locations. So we start from the bottom. We've got a position here at the bottom left, then we've got the next one up, the next one up, the next one, next one, next one. Okay, so we have 6 different positions, and these are represented here. Okay, so if we look at this, you will see we have the different vectors, right, for our bookshelves. So these represent the start points. Okay, so we are basically going to loop through our 6 different things, our 6 different shelves, and then we are going to get the position of that, and we're going to decide whether or not we want to put a book in there or not. Okay, and this is what determines whether or not we actually put a book in there. Okay, so I'm going to look at the original code and find out what we are actually using in this case. And this is getting the mesh for the book. This is adding the actual component. And what is the actual error we're getting here, guys, by the way, guys, is that our static mesh is we are basically getting an infinite loop. Okay? Now, how we are getting stuck in that infinite loop, I'm not 100% sure. But if we do that, right? And that's right so far. So we've got a frequency value now. I am going to say that this should actually be something to do with the frequency value. Right? So I'm going to say that this original bookshelf is not quite right. So I'm going to check another one of the bookshelves. And it actually still does the same thing. So that's rather staggering. Okay. Right, now that's okay. And what we actually do here is this here. is a stop. Okay, and what we need to do here is we put frequency value in here. Okay. Hey Slors, how you doing, mate? And basically this should now give us a few books. Right? We'll disable that. We shall disable that. And we're going to stop that. We're going to check again. Now, we're getting frequency value. Right, so if we set our frequency value to none, and press play, there's no books. Right, so that is correct. Right, because basically what it's doing here is we are setting this to none, so the frequency value is 0, and therefore there is a 100% chance, because it's 0 to 0, and if it equals 0 then we set it to be invisible. Okay, so in theory if we show right, so this is weird, okay, because this is actually working the wrong way around. Right? Because basically the more books you want, the less chance that this number will be 0. Okay? So actually in theory these should be the other way around. Right, because if I now, right, let's have a look, right, if I select full, Well, yeah, that's right. That's full. Okay. Now, if I want there to be a few books, then basically I should be setting this to about 50. Average books should be, let's say, 10. Lots of books should be, let's say, 3. No books should be 0. Actually, so that should be like 50% books. Right, if I set that to 2, right, there's that's 33% books. Okay. So these are actually working the wrong way round. Right. So if I say few books, I don't know why, but that should be between 0 and 1, right? So basically it should be giving us quite a few spaces. In fact, it should be giving us 50% spaces, right? So we should be adding a breakpoint here to find out if it's ever hitting this, which it is. Right, resume, that's 2. So it's definitely hitting it. Right, but we're not seeing any hidden books. Or are we? And I just can't see them because there's not a spotlight on them. Okay, so I'm gonna have to move that back a bit. Now, is there books or not? Is the question. We definitely have some spaces, but not many. And the is random should give us we're going to add a breakpoint here because I want to know if that's hitting that thing or not. Yeah, it does hit it. Right? But it looks to me . that 10% of the books should be invisible, right? So what we'll do, so that we can check this, is we'll add a variable and we'll call it book count, right? And it's going to be an integer. Right? And then it's going to be at the start. At the start here, we're going to set it to 0. Right? At the start of each shelf, we're going to reset it. Okay? And then when we make a book invisible, we're going to increment it right, and then when it finishes the fill complete, we're going to get this and we're going to do a print string on it, right, so that we know how many books should be invisible in each shelf, right, and that's going to tell us whether or not it's actually making them invisible or not, and if we're actually getting the numbers that we expect. Okay. So we'll put these up for, let's say, 30 seconds, and the usual white color. Okay, so in theory we should get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers, and it's going to be from the bottom to the top how many books are missing. Okay, 3, 3, so there isn't very many, and in fact in the first one there's none. So I'm beginning to wonder here if this is actually correct. I'm going to put this to 10. And then I'm going to spin it round so we can actually see the books. And you can see there we've got 4. So there's not very many books missing. Right? Now what I am going to do is I'm going to reformulate our calculation regarding the quantities, or let's say we do random. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to say 50% books. Okay, so from that point of view, what we'll do is reformulate this calculation, right, and this is going to get removed, and we're basically going to get this and say is less than or equal to And this is actually going to go in here, and we're going to remove that. Then we're going to give it a percentage, so it's between 0, let's say between 1 and 100, right? And if it's less than the frequency value, right? So if this is less than the frequency value, then we show it. Okay? So now what we'll do is we'll change these values here. That's 0. So that's going to work fine. Then let's say this is, few is, let's say 20%. Average would be 50%. Lots would be 75%. And full would be 100. Right? So if we save that, we click on our bookcase, and if we have it set to random, this should be 50%. Now there are definitely books missing, and you can see there that there's books missing. Right, and we can see again there's books missing all over the place. Now maybe this isn't just, this maybe isn't a great angle to see it at, right? But we can definitely see there's books missing there. Right? Now, if we click on this and we hit view, well, it seems to be that we're not getting a lot of books being removed. Right? Which means that our values here %, and it is less than or equal to. Right, so I think the best idea here these are the wrong way around. Right, so this should be not. That should go in there. And there we go. Got a lot less books now. Okay. So if we now click on average, average, okay, we're getting a decent number. So you can see there that these numbers should all be the same. That one's a bit weird. There's 10 there. It's the, and there's lots of books. And if we say full, it's full. Okay, so that's working absolutely fine now. Right, and this was set at 1. So if we set this to few, press run, you can see there that we've got the different size of books, and yep, that's looking good. That's looking good again. Right, so we're getting a few, but some of it's because of the light, because like you can't see that looks like a book there, but it's not, and that's not there, and there's not a book there or there, right? So obviously it is working, but it kind of doesn't look like it's working until you do a few. Right? And I think the easiest way to set this up is to basically set this to, like, let's say 30, save that, then just basically put it to random. Right, now we could take this further, right? And what we could do is we could do it on a per shelf basis, right? So what we could actually do here, right, is we could delete this again, right? Because we don't need it anymore. We know what it's doing, right? And we can delete this, right? But what we could do at the start of each shelf, right, we could set this frequency value, right? So we could say if it is random, we could branch on this, right? Right, I really need to tidy up this code, or at least this blueprint. If it is random, right, we do this for each shelf. Right, and we basically int in range, and we basically say 1 in 100, right? And we plonk it in there, And then this is going to give us some really funky results. You'll see there that we've got full ones, empty ones, half empty ones, etc, etc. We might end up with a full bookcase, partially empty and quite a lot of emptiness. Yeah, it's pretty good. And yeah, we've got nearly completely empty book. So we're now doing, when we set it to random, we're doing it on a per shelf basis, right? Now we could actually do this on a per book basis. But I'm going to go with the fact that this is kind of good. Right? So you can see there that we end up with all sorts of different results. Got lots of empty books there and lots of empty books there, and that's great. So we can stop that. Right now, whether or not we're using this bookcase here is irrelevant, because in our other map, now we can actually fix this for the other bookcases now, right? So if we look at our maps and we go to our gateway, right, we can check on our other maps. Right, we're not bothered about that. We can actually, is this a bookcase one or a bookcase? Yeah, that's a bookcase one. So if I press play there, right, we have our bookcase with different numbers of books. You can see one of them there has got lots of books, right? So that's pretty cool. We have our blood donor, etc. And obviously for this one there is no thing there. And that's excellent. And this is now doing exactly what we want. It is actually facing against this wall, and we're going to have to do it on a 10. Right, and that should work better. And that's looking okay to me. Now, what I would kind of one of the ways that I do the lighting, and I'm no expert in lighting, I can tell you that, is we can add some directional lights that are really dim alright, so we can make them like a 2. Right, now if we duplicate that and then spin it 90, duplicate that and spin it 90 and duplicate that and spin it 90, that basically gives us a little bit of light in every direction. Right? And if we do that as like a red, okay, that right. And we'll save all that. Don't know why it's giving us the preview shit. Don't know what that exactly does either. We're not doing any of that or any of that. Okay. So we'll live with that. Right. Now, what I want to do here is to have this interactive widget thing. I want to have like a bit of text on it. So what we're going to do is when we create this widget, we're going to look at the widget, right? So we're going to have an image and what we're actually going to do here is we're going to wrap it with a vertical box, and then what we're going to do is we're going to put text in here, and we are basically going to say text, and we'll call it command. Okay, and that's going to be a variable. We're going to save that. Then we're going to go to our graph, and we're going to say command, and that is going to be a string, and it's going to be instance editable and expose on spawn. Then we're going to drag it in. We're going to leave that as it is, but we're going to get our text command. Right, and we're going to allow this up to us. Set text. Right, and basically that's going to go in there, and this is going to go here and here. We're going to save it, and now when we go to the picture and we've got our command here, we can say enter. Okay, but we're going to go back to this widget and we're going to update this text. Right, and we're going to have that. And that'll do us. So now when we walk up to an interactable item, we'll be able to put a bit of text. Right, so you can see there we've got enter, and that looks great. Okay, and now we can update our teleporter and our wood thing. Okay, so if we go to teleporter, we go to here, and we can now go break. Nope, we can say teleport, and for our wood thing, right, we've got our wood block, right, we can do this and we can say break. Okay, so now that we've done that, right, we can jump into the level. And this is going to take a second because I shut down this earlier, and we can turn around and that says teleport, and we need to do something with the size of that actually. That says break, and that says teleport, and that's resizing the teleporter is resizing this thing widget, so we need to go back into our widget and make sure we can actually wrap it with a scale box. I don't know if that's going to do it or not, but we can check in a minute. If not, we can set up the image properly. But on that, guys, if you wouldn't mind, hit the like and subscribe if you're enjoying the stream. I'm going to take a quick break for a second or two, and grab a cigarette. I shall be back in a moment. Check out the description for ways to join the Discord and support the channel from as little as a couple of bucks, or check out my previous game on Steam, FTD2. There's links in the description. I'll be back in a second. Don't go anywhere, guys. Okay, we are back, and we can take a look at this. So I'm going to check that to see if our teleport is now making sure that this is the same size. Don't know if that's going to be the case or not, but we can check it out. So let's do that now. Right, so we can jump in our first. I'm liking this better. right? And we can check here. Nope, it's still making it bigger. So what we're going to have to do is basically manually, and we're doing it to set brush from texture here, right? Which isn't the best idea. So if we go to this image, we're going 64 by 64, but that probably isn't the size. We should probably just go 100 by 100 either way, right? So what we'll do is we will set brush right, and we'll make a slate brush, and we shall say, I believe it's 128 by 128, right? We'll check it out though. 128, right? And basically the image can go in here. We can save it. We can press play. We do need to plug it in though. It's a bit silly, but never mind. Right, so you can now see that our image isn't in line, and that's because it kinda never was, right? This vertical box should be in there. And that should be 0.5, right? And that is a bit on the big side. Okay, but the important thing here, or let's just fix that, right? And we could make this 100 by 100. Save that. Press play. And we'll check on the size of this. Yeah, we like that. That's good. That's a pretty nice size, I would say. Now, the question is that, yeah, it is. That's the same size, right? And what we want to do now is we want to put, well, we can do it a couple of ways, but what I suggest we do is, I can't remember what this is called. It's not a panel. It's like a miscellaneous one, I believe. Okay, it's not that either. So it's a spacer. It comes under primitive. We can do that, and then we can give it a, let's say 10. Okay. This vertical box, alright, that's fine. Just wondering if this has got any padding. The answer is no. Padding none, padding none. Okay. So we can live with that. And that's nice. And that's nice, we like that. And that's nice, we like that. I'm just wondering here, right, if we change this, it was in our teleporter, right? If we change this to like a smaller word, so we could also say enter there, and this isn't going to change the size, so it's going to basically look the same as this one. Right. And yeah. We like that. And we like that. Okay. There we go. Okay. So the next thing that we need to really do is work on our scores. Okay. So we're going to need a widget for this, and we're also going to need to use our data tables, and then we're going to have to save the values as well, right? So we're going to be going to our HUD, then main menu, then high scores. We've got our high score ratings and our high score struct, and the next thing we're going to have to do is actually going to create a widget, high scores. Okay, so we're going to have a general high score one, and then what we've got to do is we're going to have another one that's going to be W and high score line. Okay. Hi Marcus Games, how are you? So in our high score line, we're going to basically delete that. Then we're going to have a panel, and it's going to be a horizontal box, and then in there we're going to have text, and then we're going to have another text, and we're probably going to have another two texts, come to think of it. Right, I'm going to explain to you what these are going to be. So the first one is going to be txt level name, then then our next one is going to be txt time. That's going to be a variable, and so is this one, so that's okay. Then this one is going to be txt rating, and the next one is going to be txt let's say complete. This might not be a text complete, this might be like a checkbox or not, right? And in the graph we're going to delete that, then we're going to delete that, and we're going to have row, or let's say level row, and this is going to be a reference to the level in the data table that we need. Right, and this is going to be, I would say, an integer, and it's going to be instance editable and expose on spawn, so that when we create this it can use that to check out the data table. So in our struct high scores, right, we're going to have a score, a level, a time, and we're going to have a rating here, right? So new variable, is going to be rating, and that's going to be E high score ratings, and in here, just for the sake of it, we're going to have a level complete. Okay, so we can save that. Now, what we're going to have to do is, in the first instance, we're going to have each level stored by default. Hi Thomas, how are you, mate? So we're basically going to pull our stats from here to fill in our high score line, right? So we're going to get data table row, and we don't have a data table yet, so we need a data table, which is in and we've got the bots again. Right, so we're looking at this data table which we haven't created yet, which we're going to have to create. And so we're going to create a data table, and it's going to come from high scores. Okay. And we're going to have to rename it. So it's going to be dt underscore high scores. Yeah, I normally get 1 or 2 per stream, Thomas. Now, what we're going to have to do here, right, is in our high score struct, we're going to have to create a new variable, and we're going to have score ratings. Okay, and now this is going to be an integer, but it's going to be an array, right? Because basically what you're going to need is a level for each this isn't going to be that, it's going to be a bool. You're going to have a level for, or a score for each level, but for each rating. So let's say to be a 1 star you need 1,000, right? But for a 2 star you need 2,000, 3 star 3,000, etc., right? So this is why we need an array of score ratings. Okay, and then we can work out how many stars to give the player, and then we can work out the rating from there as well, right? So this might change, but these are the values that we need. Okay, now these are the these aren't actually Yeah, we're going to save these in the first place because these are going to be defaults. So we're going to have to save these in the game save and also in the game instance. Okay? But either way, we'll work it out. And I would say that should come first. Right? So we'll save that, and then we aren't actually going to load this we aren't going to load this from the data table. We're going to load this from the game instance, right? So basically we have to go into our player controller for our menu. In fact, we have to go into here, into our game instance, so in our save game first of all, right, we're going to do level scores, and those are going to be struct high scores, or is it going to be level or is it going to be high scores? I think it's going to be a bit of both actually. Right, we'll say, right, that's not quite, let's have a look here. We'll get the level scores, we'll do a break on it and find out. You see there's nothing there, right? So in effect there's some things that should actually go in here that shouldn't go in the high scores. Okay, so for example, if we look at the struct high scores, the score rating should probably not go in here, right? The score will go in, the time will go in, the rating will go in, and whether this is, the rest of this is fine. Okay, but in our level scores, right, we should be changing this. Okay, so with that in mind, I need to find them, and that's not it. So let's have a look in. It's not in there either. Okay, so the question is, where do I put this? I'm guessing in here, which it's not. Right, I'm wondering where. Right, okay, whatever. So we're looking for the struct level. Right, this is it here. So instruct level, we add one called rating scores, and that's going to be an integer and it's going to be an array, right? And for example, right, if we go to here and then go to DT levels, we're going to have rating scores, right? So we're basically going to have 5 for each. Right, so basically 1,000, let's say 2,000, let's say 3,000, and let's say 4,000. Right, so basically 0 to 1, 0 to 1,000 is 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars, and 4 stars. Okay. And the next thing we need to do is go into here, and these we don't need to save these, right? We can load these up at runtime, but what we do now need to do is, I shouldn't have done that actually, we'll call it player scores, and this is going to be high scores, and that is going to be an array, right? And we shall be loading these up or we'll be transferring these from the data table to we'll be doing it from here into our save game to start with, and then we'll be basically using the save game from then on. Okay, so we shall make this slightly different. We'll save that. Now we have got an image from this, which is good, because now what we can do is we could use this image as our in our widget. So we now have this, and the only time we're going to reference this is basically if we have no saved game. Okay, otherwise we're going to pull it from the saved game. Okay, so we need to go to Oh yeah, and we also need to do it from our. We also need to pass it to our game instance. Okay. So our game instance as well as our save game is going to have the same thing, right? So basically it's player scores, right? And in here we're going to have player scores, right? And this is going to be our struct high scores, right? Which is right. So the next thing we need to do is go into here, and if it's not already saved, we've got to do this, right? And we're going to remove this, or move this to the side a bit, out of the way. And what we're going to do is we're going to say data table get data table row names. Okay. And it's going to come from DT high scores. Then we're going to say for each okay, and then we're going to say data get data table row, alright. We're going to get it from the same place, and then we're going to do save game. Then we're going to say player scores. Then we're going to say add unique. And that's going to be for each row. We're going to add these on. Okay. So we're basically going to generate the player scores and we're going to add them to the save game. Okay, and I'm just going to have to take a quick comfort break. So if you're enjoying the stream, hit like, subscribe, and I shall be back in Okay guys, we are back. So let's carry on with this. So we've now loaded up the base high scores from the levels, the ratings and stuff, right? Should this be from high scores? I'm getting myself confused here. Apparently yes, because these rows are going into here correctly, right? So now what we do is, if we're back in our wow, yeah, that's just interesting concept. Wait a minute. Right, okay. So we are basically getting this from player stats, right? But the issue here is that when we're picking up the levels, this stuff here, right? We need to just do this from the data table straight into the instance, right? So what we're going to do is we don't save this to the save game, because we're always going to pull it from the data table, right? But what we're going to do is we're going to have another one called level settings, right? And this is going to be struct level. Okay, and basically we can do a custom event here, custom event, right? And we can say load level settings, right? And from here we can do this, we can do that, and this is going to be that, right? And we're going to add unique, and then we're going to say data table Yeah, but it's only because of lack of planning, really. And the other thing that causes it to get a bit out of hand is when you're bringing in, what do you call it, assets, because then they tend to have their own file system. So you basically end up with like assets and assets within there, and then other assets don't do that, and etc etc, and then you end up all over the place. So we're going to do for each, and this is us just loading our level settings into the game instance. Now we might not even require this, to be fair. Right, and this is going to be data table row. And this is going to be from levels. And this is going to be from levels. We may not actually need this in the game instance. We probably only need it in the menu, but we'll keep it here for now. I suppose we could use it. Yeah, I suppose we will use it in the level. Well, I don't know. Yeah, either way, you could do it either way, right? Right. So basically, what I'm going to do is get it to basically add its own information there. So if we go back to here and we grab our instance, right, we can basically say load level settings. Right. And that's going to load the each of the levels into our game instance, so that we can then use it within the level itself if we want to. Yeah, why not? We can add a reroute node there. We can basically delete that. We can delete that. Plug that in there. Then we can do the same thing there. And that tidies that up a bit. Then we can straighten that connection and straighten this connection. That tidies things up a bit. Okay. And you know what? This makes sense to do this. We'll straighten that. Then we shall delete these two. Plug it in there. Drag this down a bit. basically plug it in there. Right, that tidies that up a bit. Okay. So now we've got the level settings in our instance. We can use it in either, basically anywhere. Right, and they're always going to get pulled from a data table, because they're basically the level name, the level image, plus the scores that you need to get different ratings on the different levels, right? So they're never going to change, and they aren't saved anywhere apart from the data table. We don't need to update them, they always stay the same. Okay, so that's fine. And the next thing is we need to load the actual high scores. Right, now we have just saved the high scores to our save game. Right, so that's if we're creating the default save game. And again, we could use this in the game instance, right? So if we go to the event graph, we can do basically the exact same things, right? So what we'll do is we shall just move these along a bit. Right, and we shall get the high scores. It's actually player scores. And in our game instance, I hate when it does that, it just goes offline just a little bit. We are going to set player scores. Right, but you'll notice that our player scores, for some reason, are not an array. So change that to an array, load that in, then basically we're going to plug that in there, and now we have our player scores in our game instance, right? Which once again we don't necessarily need to do, because when are we going to use the high scores? Well, with that question in mind, if we've got it in our instance, right, all we need to do is, like, say for example you're checking against a high score all the time to see if you've bettered your other high score, then it's obviously going to come in handy to have it in the instance, because when you're in an actual level you would need to load that up anyway, right? Now, as I said, you could do it more efficiently by loading it up as the level, only loading up the level that you need at the time, right? So you could move this from the game instance into your, just basically the main menu, or this controller in fact, right? And just use it from there. But when you load up an actual level and you load up the other controller, you could load up just the data from the level that you're actually on, right? So two ways of looking at it really. Either way works. But what we're going to have to do now is look at our high score thing and decide what we want to do with the high scores. Or at least we need to check that we've saved it and we've actually loaded it as well. Right, so we should be able to do that just now. So if we minimize this and we go back to our levels and main menu, oh that's the wrong thing, I'm an idiot. We're going back to maps and the main menu. I wouldn't say in a lot of ways the project doesn't get more confusing, it actually gets easier, because as you work with it, you're basically working your way into familiarization with it. Cyber Shell, it's a kind of difficult one to say. Now, if you weren't here earlier, I actually finished the bookshelf thing. I fixed it so that it actually works, and I shall show you here. Right, so basically if we set it to 1.5, right, and we press play, okay, whatever, is this high scores? Yeah, it is. Actually, that's not coming from high scores, that's going to come from the instance, right? Yeah, so you'll notice that we've done stuff to this so that the books are there or not, so it actually procedurally generates where the books are. So like there's only a couple there, there's spaces up there. Now there's lots of space there, and up the top shelf. Not much space there. And you can see that it's randomly generating where books are. Okay. Or you can basically set it that it's not random, and you can set it to be full, and it's totally full. Yeah, I already had it, so it didn't make any difference. So it's fine. You know, it's these little things make it allow you to just set it up how you want. So you can set it with no books, right? You can set it with a few books, right? Or you can just say set yourself up randomly. Yes, they are going to get used, right? They're definitely going to get used, and they're in here, right? So you can see that there's spaces in there, right? So they're actually going to be in levels, right? And this is another one that procedurally generated this cabinet, it decides what objects it's going to put on each shelf and then spins them around to different rotations. Yeah, so right, so all of this works perfectly fine. The difference is, at the moment, right, let me just explain this one for the last 5 minutes, is when we go into a level, right, it is going to change, right, because I've only made certain parts at the moment, right? I'll show you what I mean. Right, as you can see, at the moment, these are all sort of single corridor type corridors, right? But the idea was always to have the same sections done, but opening them up so that you can create a room, right? Now, I know how to do it, right? I've done this type of thing before. In fact, very, very similar, right? So, one of my crashes the other night killed the other stuff, right? But there was another folder here, right, called layout room parts. Okay, now what they do is allow me to actually have a room, right? So this might actually go out and fill up this space here, right? And then you've got more let's say, I'm trying to think of the word here, there's more potential for adding like bookcases and stuff like that, right? At the moment, if I put bookcases in, right, they're probably going to work in a corner, right? But if I put them at the edge, then it's probably going to make it too tight, right? But if I add a new part that allows a room to be bigger and differently shaped, then that's going to allow me to be able to do a bit more with the procedural generation of whether or not a bookcase is there or lights are there, or, you know, take it from last night when I basically add a picture or take away a picture depending on if a light's there or a light's not there, and etc, right? Now, I had built some of these parts, but unfortunately I lost them on one of the crashes, right? So I hadn't done them all, and there's going to have to be a little bit of jiggery pokery to do them, because they're not going to follow the rules quite the same of like one of these parts, because the outline is going to be different and is going to have to match up differently. But we still should be able to do it, right? And that's what I might work on tonight, if that's what you want me to, right? But really, for the initial point was the first level is going to be like tight rooms, tight corridors, tight spaces, blah blah blah, right? But maybe the next level will open up a bit, so that there's like bigger rooms. It won't be so claustrophobic, but it's going to allow me to put like more furniture, more stuff like that in. Okay? So that is the thought behind that. So guys, if you've enjoyed the stream, hit the like and subscribe. Trying to get to 500 subscribers, nearly there. Only need another 17 or so, I don't know. So very much appreciated. And check out the description for Discord. Join Discord if you want. Normally I'm in there in between streams and before and after streams. And you can support the channel on Patreon. Links again description, or my previous game on Steam, it's in the description as well. Thank you very much for watching. I shall see you tonight at 8 PM Central, and bye bye for now.